In my last life, to stop my childhood sweetheart from spiraling into self-destruction, I told her parents she was dating a punk. They were broken up, and her life got back on track. She was accepted into the National Academy of Dance, her dream school, and eventually became the youngest prima ballerina in the country. We even got married. But it wasn't until that punk, Ethan, pushed me off a balcony, and my wife, Victoria, watched without lifting a finger that I understood. On the verge of death, I finally realized she had hated me all along for telling her parents about him. Reborn, I decided to respect her choices this time. Let fate run its course. I wouldn't be her savior again. She got her wish and ended up with the punk. But in the end, she came to me, full of regret, and asked why. Why didn't you tell my parents about him this time? Chapter 1. The deafening roar of a souped-up motorcycle jolted me back to reality. Victoria Walsh's youthful, beautiful face appeared before me. I'm going out with Ethan. If the teacher asks where I am during evening study hall, cover for me, okay? She was perched sideways on Ethan's thundering motorcycle, wearing a pretty dress. Her arms were wrapped tightly around his waist, her face aglow with a blissful, contented smile. Ethan shot me a mocking glance, then deliberately revved the engine and peeled out, kicking up a cloud of dust. He was so focused on his little show of defiance that he paid no mind to Victoria's safety. She wasn't even wearing a helmet. Ah, Victoria let out a piercing shriek. The reckless maneuver nearly threw her from the seat. Only her desperate grip on Ethan's waist saved her from being flung onto the pavement. The obnoxious motorcycle, much like its owner, left behind a visible trail of dust and exhaust fumes. Faintly, I could hear their voices drifting back. What, you scared? If you're scared, get off. I'm not scared, I know you'll protect me, Victoria cooed, her voice dripping with affection. Before Ethan came into the picture, she only ever spoke to me that way. If this were my past life, I would have been heartbroken. But now I just felt a dull phantom ache all over my body. The price of stopping Victoria's downfall was too high. I could never forget the moment before I was reborn. After Ethan shoved me from the balcony, I lay on the ground, a pool of crimson spreading from my head wound, and Victoria just stood there, watching me with cold indifference. You deserve to die, she'd said. If you hadn't snitched on us, Ethan and I would have been together years ago. As the blood drained from my body and a deep chill set in, Victoria stood to the side, locked in a passionate kiss with Ethan. I used my last ounce of strength to reach for her, begging for help. She kicked my hand away in disgust, extinguishing my final glimmer of hope. Victoria and I had been inseparable since we were kids, true childhood sweethearts. We were the longest-standing presence in each other's lives. From elementary through high school, we were always in the same school, usually the same class, always side by side. We had our own secret language, an unspoken understanding, a special bond that set us apart. Everyone just assumed we would end up together. Her dream was to get into the prestigious National Academy of Dance. My dream was to get into Stanford. We were both working hard to achieve our goals, but it seems a rebellious, cocky, pretty boy holds a natural allure for a girl who's always followed the rules. Ethan Vance was the school bully, roguishly handsome, a smoker, a drinker, a brawler, a player, a street racer. He did everything the school forbade. Victoria had always been told she was beautiful, and years of dance training had given her an elegance that set her apart. She was the secret crush of countless boys. I don't know when it started, but she became Ethan's new prey. During a basketball game, a crowd of girls flocked to give Ethan water. He ignored them all, sauntering over to Victoria and asking her for a drink instead. A photo of the infamous bad boy waiting in line to buy her a bubble tea that summer went viral in all the school group chats. Victoria fell for him hard and fast. She started skipping classes with him. She learned to smoke, the stale scent of second-hand smoke clinging to her clothes, mixed with the faint smell of alcohol. It hurt to see her fall for someone else, but it was worse watching her throw her life away. Her grades plummeted. A month before the big dance academy auditions, she was supposed to attend a crucial intensive training camp. Instead, she plotted to injure her own leg, the most vital asset for a dancer, just so she could skip the camp and spend every day with Ethan. She forgot her dream of the academy. She forgot the years of sweat and tears she had poured into her craft. More than a decade of discipline and dedication, thrown away because she couldn't bear to be apart from a boy for 1 month. For the sake of her future, I finally told her parents everything. Consumed by anger, they clamped down on her, supervising her every move. They gave her no opportunity to see Ethan. After the training camp, she aced her audition. She placed second in the country. But because she'd skipped so many classes with Ethan, her academic scores were in the toilet. In the end, I gritted my teeth and sacrificed my own final review time to tutor her. She got into the National Academy of Dance. I didn't get into Stanford. That was the greatest regret of my previous life. I knew she went to find Ethan after graduation, but by then he'd already moved on to someone new. I thought that would make her see that he was never serious about her, that she was just a game to him. His girlfriend could have been any pretty girl. Years later, she became the nation's youngest and most celebrated ballerina. I became a successful AI entrepreneur, and we got married. I heard from a classmate that Ethan never went to college. He entered the workforce early, still just a good-for-nothing punk. He got a girl pregnant, had a shotgun wedding, and ended up a father of 3. I thought Victoria had moved on. I never expected to come home one day and find her in bed with Ethan. In the argument that followed, Ethan pushed me off the balcony. Only in my dying moments did I realize just how much Victoria hated me. So, this time, as Victoria willingly walked down that destructive path, I chose to respect her fate. I was done playing the hero. I was curious to see if she would regret it now that she had her wish of being with Ethan. As for me, I was going to make up for my past life's regret and get into Stanford. The next morning, Victoria stood before me, fuming. "Sincere Miller. The teacher asked where I was during study hall last night. Why didn't you cover for me?" she seethed. "Do you have any idea how close I was to getting caught?" My parents almost found out I looked past her calmly. "Why? Is Ethan someone you have to hide? Does he embarrass you so much that you don't want your parents to know about him?" Her face flushed crimson. "Of course not," I nodded. "Then why not tell Mr. and Mrs. Walsh about him?" I tilted my head, feigning a sudden realization. "Oh, I get it. You're just playing around with him, right? You're not serious about him at all?" Victoria was speechless, unable to find a single word to refute me. Her face burned. A sudden chill ran down her spine. She slowly turned around. Her eyes met Ethan's, who was standing just outside the classroom window. His cold, hard stare made her flinch. He didn't spare her another glance before turning and walking away. Victoria scrambled after him in a panic. I turned my attention back to the practice exam on my desk. The student in front of me turned around, indignant on my behalf. "What is with your childhood friend? She's got a model student like you, handsome and smart, and she throws you over for a punk who does nothing but smoke, drink, and fight. He's a total mess." I just smiled. The next day, Victoria limped into class and swapped seats with someone else, her face pale. She coughed intermittently. She was no longer my deskmate, as if to punish me, but to me she was no longer important. Not sitting next to her was an unexpected reward. The story was that her foot was injured as a way of proving her love for Ethan. To her, it was a badge of honor. On a snowy winter night, she had danced for him in the snow, barefoot and wearing only a thin dance leotard, a dance for an audience of 1. When she was finished, her feet were frostbitten, and she came down with a fever that night. Such a grand, noble love. I watched with cold detachment as she slept through classes during the day and skipped evening study hall. One evening, I was on my balcony getting some fresh air when I saw her sneaking out of her house. She joyfully hopped onto the back of Ethan's motorcycle, and they sped off, its modified engine rattling the quiet neighborhood, waking people from their sleep. I overheard her parents next door. "Sounds like that hooligan on his motorcycle again," Mr. Walsh grumbled. I wonder which poor family's daughter he's got with him this time, Mrs. Walsh sighed. Who cares, as long as our Victoria is a good girl and stays away from thugs like that. The Walshes doted on their only daughter, treating her like a precious jewel. I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for them. Soon it was time for midterms. At 4 a.m, the day of the first exam, I was vaguely awakened by the roar of a motorcycle. It must have been Victoria and Ethan just getting home. After the exams, we got a rare day and a half off. First thing Monday morning, the results were posted. Our homeroom teacher stood at the front of the class, lavishing praise on the students who had improved the most. The one who received the most praise was me. I had jumped from the top 10 to 5th in the entire school, every step a testament to hard work. Then the teacher called Victoria out into the hall. Everyone knew why. Her academic scores had always been average, but this time, she was dead last in the class. The gap between her and the student who was second to last was over 100 points. It was a stark measure of how much she had fallen behind. When she returned, her eyes were red. The teacher had clearly given her a lecture. She collapsed onto her desk, sobbing. A couple of her friends went to comfort her, but most of the students were crowded around me, asking for study tips. I shared what I knew freely. The lively buzz around my desk was a sharp contrast to the miserable atmosphere around Victoria's. At one point, our eyes met. Hers were filled with grievance and blame, as if she was furious at me for not comforting her, for being so indifferent. Yet, beneath the resentment, there was a flicker of arrogant expectation. I simply turned my head away. Her sobs grew louder. I don't know who did it, but someone called Ethan. He came over, whispered a few words in her ear, and just like that, her tears turned to laughter. Then Ethan strode directly to my desk and kicked it over. My books and pens scattered across the floor in a mess. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" he snarled. "You knew Vicky felt bad about her score, so you had to show off in front of her." I saw Victoria's eyes glisten with tears of gratitude. "What's there to be so proud of?" "So you got third in the school, big deal," Ethan said, looking down at me. "Let's make a bet. Next exam, if I score higher than you get on your knees in front of me and Vicky and slap yourself twice. How about it?" Someone in the crowd called out, "And what if you lose?" "Ha, if I lose," he said with absolute certainty, "not only will I kneel before him, I'll bow my head to the ground 3 times. I was genuinely curious how he could be so confident he'd win. Even a clay doll has some fight in it. I met his gaze, refusing to back down. "I'll take that bet." Ethan's eyebrow shot up. "But," I said, placing my hand firmly on his shoulder, "before the competition, shouldn't you show your opponent a little respect?" I smiled. Ethan tried to shrug my hand off, but my grip was like iron. His shoulder didn't budge. His face darkened. Victoria, seeing this, seemed to remember something. Her eyes darted nervously. She quickly knelt to defuse the situation, righting my desk and picking up my scattered books. "Ethan was just worried about me," she said, ostensibly defending him but implicitly calling me petty. "There's no need to be so dramatic about it." I gave Ethan's shoulder a few firm pats. His face turned black. Clenching his jaw, he grabbed Victoria and stormed out. As he walked away, I saw him subconsciously rubbing the shoulder I had just patted. A month passed. Despite the bet, Ethan's behavior didn't change. He still skipped classes, got into fights, and hung out at bars. When he was in class, he was usually asleep on his desk. In contrast, I worked tirelessly. Outside of exercise and basic necessities, all my time was spent studying. To most people, the outcome of the bet was already a foregone conclusion. The day of the final exams arrived. Ethan's and my testing rooms were right next to each other. After each subject, he would catch my eye, give me a thumbs up, and then slowly turn it upside down in a gesture of contempt. I really wanted to know what fueled his incredible confidence. The other students were all secretly watching this silent war. On the day the results were released, Ethan swaggered up to my desk and slammed the school-wide ranking sheet down in front of me. "Time to kneel, buddy." And don't forget the slaps. A huge commotion erupted inside and outside the classroom. From third to last in the school to third overall. How did Ethan score even better than Sincere Miller? Is this like one of those campus romance novels come to life? The bad boy slacker gets top grades for the girl he loves. Maybe Ethan will get into Stanford next. The atmosphere grew frenzied. Does this mean dating doesn't hurt your grades? Maybe it's a motivator. I'm kind of tempted to confess to my crush now. Ethan doesn't even try. He skips class, fights, sleeps through lectures, and he still gets third in the school. So what am I studying so hard for? I get up at 5 and go to bed at midnight. I spend every waking moment studying, and I still can't beat a guy who never studies. If you can succeed without trying, what's the point of all my effort? Some students were inspired. Others were utterly demoralized. Victoria clung to Ethan's arm, the picture of a doting girlfriend. She lifted her chin proudly. What's wrong? Is someone a sore loser? Can't handle the stakes? I heard someone whisper in the crowd. Kneeling is humiliating, but breaking a promise is even more pathetic. Yeah, just admit you lost and kneel. I used to think Sincere Miller was a good guy, but now I've lost all respect. Buoyed by public opinion, Victoria grew even more smug. My guy might have a bad reputation at school, but he's a man of his word. He always follows through. She leaned her head gently on Ethan's shoulder. There's a reason I fell for my guy and not for someone else. I've always been a good judge of character. A smirk played on Ethan's lips. Are you going to kneel on your own, or do I have to make you? I tapped my pen on the desk. If you were the one who lost, would you really kneel and bow your head to the ground 3 times for me? Of course, Ethan said impatiently. I always do what I say. I casually pointed to one of the first 6 multiple-choice questions on the math paper. No need to rush. I just wanted to ask our school's 3rd-ranked genius for a little help. What's the basic mathematical formula used for this question? I just want to learn from you first, I said calmly. I'll kneel as soon as I get my answer. I promise. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Ethan, just tell him if you say the formula, Sincere has to kneel under the watchful eyes of the entire class. Ethan's eyelashes fluttered. Victoria's expression began to sour. You got a perfect score on the math exam. A simple formula like this must be child's play for you, I pressed. Just say it, and I'll kneel right now. A minute passed. Someone in the crowd whispered, the first 6 multiple-choice questions in math are always gimmies. If he doesn't even know that formula, I'm starting to doubt his perfect score is real. The murmurs of suspicion grew. Victoria snapped. You're the one who lost and has to kneel. Stop trying to change the subject. You're just a sore loser, a waste of space, pathetic. I despise you. She shot a look at a few of Ethan's cronies in the crowd. What are you guys standing around for? He doesn't want to kneel, so let's help him bow that precious head of his. She was already adopting the mannerisms of a thug's girlfriend. Just as the boys were cracking their knuckles, someone burst into the classroom, sweating. Ethan, there you are. I've been looking all over for you. The dean wants to see you in his office. You need to go right now. At the same time, the school's PA system crackled to life. An investigation by the school has confirmed that Ethan Vance of Class 1218 broke into a teacher's office before the exams to steal the answer key. Furthermore, he used an electronic device during the test. Therefore, all of Ethan Vance's scores for this exam have been nullified. The school will take severe disciplinary action. We hope all students will learn from this and not resort to such dishonest measures. The classroom exploded. All eyes, now filled with suspicion and contempt, turned to Ethan. His face was a thundercloud. He started to leave, but I stopped him. Aren't you forgetting something? I asked. Didn't someone say they're always a good sport? Victoria immediately jumped in front of him, shielding him. This bet was never fair to begin with. Look at your grades and look at his strengths aren't in academics. The bet doesn't count. The double standard was breathtaking. I believe offering a bet based on grades was your idea, I said, throwing her own words back at her. Are you two sore losers? Ethan gritted his teeth, his eyes promising murder. But under the gaze of everyone present, he bent his proud knees and lowered his head. He knelt before me. The entire room held its breath. Victoria covered her mouth, her eyes instantly filling with tears of anguish. 1, 2, 3. Ethan bowed his head to the floor, each movement slow and forceful. When he rose, his eyes were burning with humiliation. "A bet's a bet," he spat through clenched teeth. Then he turned and stalked out of the room. Victoria's tears streamed down her face. She glared at me with pure hatred. "What's the point of being good at school? In the future, you'll just be working for people who don't have a degree. You just wait, Ethan's future will be better than any of yours." With that drama concluded, I threw myself back into my studies. The final college entrance exams were getting closer. Victoria's grades, however, continued to slide. Then, one night during evening study hall, a note was passed to me. It was from Victoria, asking me to meet her in the woods behind the school. She had something to say. I thought about it for a moment, then got up and left the classroom. I didn't return for over an hour. Later, the homeroom teacher stormed into the classroom, his face grim. "Sincere Miller out here." Now, when I was brought to the dean's office, I found my parents and Victoria's parents already there. My parents were bowing and scraping, apologizing profusely to the Walshes, who were looking at me with pure resentment. Seeing me, my parents rushed over and tried to pull me into their apology. My dad slapped my arm twice, hard. "How could you be so foolish, Mr. and Mrs. Walsh? It's my fault. I didn't raise my son right." "I am so sorry," my dad said, his back hunched as he bowed to them. In that moment, my hatred reached its peak. I saw Victoria in the corner, her eyes red from crying. Her lips were slightly swollen, her clothes disheveled, and there were glaring kiss marks on her neck. I stopped my father's apology. "Dad, I don't even know what's going on. What are you apologizing for?" Mr. Walsh raised his hand as if to slap me, but having watched me grow up, he let it fall. "I always thought you were a good kid, Sincere. I was so wrong about you." He shook his head in disappointment. "I won't even get into what you did to Vicky in the woods. But when the dean caught you, why did you abandon her and run away? Where's your sense of responsibility as a man?" My eyes met Victoria's. "Was I really the one with you in the woods?" Victoria buried her face in her mother's arms, her voice a choked sob. "Mom, he's still denying it. It's my fault. I was wrong about him. You've disappointed me so much, Mr." Walsh's finger trembled as he pointed at me. "You know how important this year is for Vicky, but you tempted her into this relationship, made her grades drop so drastically, and then you abandoned her at a critical moment." He was practically shaking with rage. "I can't bring myself to hit you," he said, turning to the dean. "But I hope the school can teach him a lesson, a formal reprimand. A note on his permanent record, something people need to learn from their mistakes, don't they?" My parents panicked. "Please, Mr. Walsh, don't do that. A mark on his record will affect his whole life. He knows he was wrong." Victoria looked at me through her tears. "Even though I like you, Sincere, the moment you abandoned me, I was so disappointed. You deserve whatever punishment the school gives you." Her tone was eager, almost joyful. I laughed. "I'll ask you one more time. Was I really the one who went into the woods with you?" A flicker of unease crossed Victoria's face, but she gritted her teeth and nodded firmly. I looked directly at the dean. "Sir, what time did you find her in the woods?" 9:30. "The whole class can prove you weren't in the classroom at that time," Victoria blurted out. I smiled. Of course I wasn't in the classroom. From 9 to 10, I was in the physics teacher's office. Victoria's eyes widened. Before anyone else could speak, I continued. "If you don't believe me, you can ask the physics teacher. The other teachers in his office can all vouch for me." When the dean confirmed my alibi, Victoria's face went ashen. My parents breathed a sigh of relief. Mr. Walsh turned and slapped his daughter across the face. "Who was that boy? He abandoned you, and you're still covering for him, even framing the boy you grew up with. Victoria, what have you become?" My parents and the teachers rushed to restrain him. "Calm down, don't hit the child. Let's talk this through." But no matter how much her parents pressed her, Victoria refused to say Ethan's name. When they turned to me and asked if I knew who she was seeing, Victoria tensed like a cornered animal. I glanced at her and finally said, "I don't know." Victoria was stunned that I would help her, and I was helping her fall even faster. If her parents knew about Ethan, they would have kept them apart at all costs. How could she continue down her path of self-destruction then? Though her parents kept a much stricter watch on her, they didn't know who the real culprit was. So Ethan continued to lead Victoria down a path that broke every school rule. Soon, a notice arrived. The intensive dance training camp was about to begin. Victoria was miserable all week, torn between attending the camp and seeing Ethan every day. The day before she was supposed to leave, my dad came to me. "Vicky's waiting for you at the door. She said she wants to apologize." I was about to refuse, but my dad persuaded me. "She must regret it. You two grew up together, give her a chance. We're neighbors after all. It's awkward for us adults if you kids aren't on good terms." I thought about it and decided to see her. When I stepped outside, she was sitting on the top step of the porch. I looked down at her. "You wanted to see me?" I wanted to talk. She kept her head down, her bangs casting a shadow over her eyes. "I'm supposed to leave for the training camp tomorrow. Do you think I should go? If you don't want to go, then don't." She looked up, surprised. In our past life, I had pleaded with her, done everything I could to convince her to go. This time, I hoped she wouldn't. A slow smile spread across her face. "Then are you willing to contribute to my decision? What are you planning to do?" She stood up, gave me a small, cryptic smile, and then deliberately threw herself down the flight of stairs. Thump. She landed in a heap at the bottom, her face contorted in pain, but her mouth was screaming, "Mom, Dad, help me." I walked down the stairs to her side. "Why did you do that?" I asked quietly. Sweat beaded on her forehead from the pain, but her smile was one of pure satisfaction. "If I can't go to a good college, why should you? If everyone thinks you pushed me, you'll have to take responsibility for me, right? Maybe you'll have to be a lookout for me and Ethan. Or maybe you'll have to repeat a year with me. In short, Sincere Miller, you are not allowed to have a better life than me." Just as her parents rushed out of the house, she gave me a cunning look. "No cameras or witnesses this time," she mouthed. I smiled, a sad, pitying smile. "You're right, no cameras or witnesses," I mouthed back, holding up my phone slightly. "But you forgot about audio recording." The color drained from her face. So, as her parents frantically gathered around her, on the verge of tears, she said through pale lips, I accidentally fell. I don't think I can go to the camp now. A fractured left leg. It meant she would miss not only the training camp but also the dance academy auditions. Her parents were so worried that their hair seemed to turn gray overnight. They looked years older. While she was injured, they lost sleep night after night, terrified for her future but afraid to pressure her. My parents were the same age as hers, but in that short time, a visible age gap had appeared between them. Because of her leg, Victoria couldn't go out to bars or ride around with Ethan anymore. She had to wheel herself to his classroom every day to see him. Soon, Ethan grew tired of it. One day I saw his motorcycle outside of school with another unfamiliar girl on the back. Victoria wasn't oblivious to this. She confronted him once, but he managed to sweet-talk his way out of it. A month before the final exams, Mr. and Mrs. Walsh asked me to tutor Victoria. They were hoping she could at least get into college on her academic scores. I refused. I wasn't going to sacrifice myself to save her again. After my parents saw them out, even they felt the request was shameless. This is the most critical time for our son's studies, and they want him to tutor their daughter? What about Sincere's future? We should probably keep our distance from now on. Victoria hated me even more for that, because she had been the one to put her parents up to it. She had wanted to study and pull her grades up, but she was too busy fighting with Ethan every other day, constantly paranoid that he was cheating on her. She had no energy left for school. The night before the first day of the final exams, I was walking home from school when a group of thugs cornered me in an empty alley. Their target was my right hand. They were all armed with thick wooden clubs. Unfortunately for them, I took them all down. When we were little, a boy used to bully Victoria because he had a crush on her. To protect her, I started learning Taekwondo. I've been learning it ever since. Perhaps it was all for this moment, not to protect someone else, but to protect myself. I called the police. The thugs confessed who had sent them. Ethan Vance. He was still bitter about having to kneel and wanted to destroy the one thing he thought I cared about most. He was over 18. He would have to face the legal consequences. When the exam results came out, my score was withheld. My mom was worried sick. What if you filled out the answer sheet wrong and there's no score? She fretted, then answered herself, No, that can't be it. It must be because you're in the top 50 in the state. Oh, my son is the best. Before we could even look up my score, admissions officers from both Stanford and MIT showed up at our house, competing to recruit me. In the end, I chose Stanford. It was the regret I needed to erase from my past life. The house next door was silent. They didn't even come to my graduation party. Later, I heard that Victoria's score was more than 50 points below the cutoff for a bachelor's degree. After that, I embarked on a new journey. I didn't slack off in college. While I studied hard, I also maintained a healthy social life. In my senior year, I and a few classmates started our own company, diving deep into the field of AI. It was tough at first, but eventually we achieved tremendous success. I also met the love of my life. She was a graduate from MIT next door. I may not have gone to MIT, but becoming an MIT son-in-law wasn't a bad alternative. Her name was Hannah, and she was a truly wonderful person. Her beauty was just the surface. Her true value was in her intelligent and cultivated mind. We were perfectly matched in our values, and we could talk for hours about work, life, anything. We settled down in the Bay Area, got married, and had an adorable daughter named Lily. My only regret was that my parents were getting older and didn't want to leave the hometown where they had spent their whole lives. One year, I brought my wife and daughter home for the holidays. As we got on the elevator, a bloated woman got on with us. She had 2 little girls trailing behind her and was holding a wailing baby in her arms. The children were all a bit grimy. Coincidentally, we were headed to the same floor. I wondered if the Walshes had moved out. My parents had never mentioned it. We stepped out of the elevator and went our separate ways. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out, "Sincere Miller." A bolt of lightning shot through my brain. I turned around slowly. "Victoria?" I asked, my voice hesitant. She looked at me, then down at herself. She was disheveled and dirty. Her gaze faltered, and a look of shame flickered in her eyes. "You're back?" I nodded and introduced my family. "This is my wife, Hannah, and this is our daughter, Lily." My wife greeted her politely. My baby girl also said sweetly, "Hello, Auntie." For some reason, after glancing at my wife and daughter, tears began to well up in Victoria's eyes. "It's been a long time. Can we talk?" Forgive my masculine curiosity, but I really wanted to know how the elegant young ballerina from my past life had ended up like this. My wife gave me a playful, knowing look and took our daughter inside. After settling her children at home, Victoria came out and sat on the steps. Tears streamed down her face. "Why? This time? Why didn't you tell my parents about me and Ethan?" Her tone was a mixture of blame and regret, but it carried another message. I heard the subtext loud and clear. She had been reborn too. "I was just giving you what you wanted," I said. "The thing you hated me for most was telling your parents about Ethan, wasn't it? You hated me so much you wanted me dead." She buried her head in her hands and sobbed. "I regret it. He's just a good-for-nothing punk who'll never amount to anything." I stood and listened as she recounted the misery of the past years. She had spent the year she was supposed to be retaking her exams messing around with Ethan. She failed again. Her scores only good enough for a community college, so she just gave up on school altogether. A few months later, she was pregnant. Her parents had no choice but to let them marry. Ethan's vices escalated from smoking, drinking, and fighting to womanizing and gambling. He refused to get a job. Victoria had wanted to find work after her first child was born, even as a kindergarten teacher teaching dance, but she got pregnant with her second before she even finished her postpartum recovery. Then came the third. 3 consecutive pregnancies had ruined her figure and covered her face in age spots. Ethan's parents had long given up on him, so the burden of raising the children fell on Victoria and her parents. Ethan grew to resent her more and more. He would take any money in the house and gamble it away. If she ever argued with him, he would beat her. Her parents' life savings were all lost to his gambling addiction. For the sake of their 3 grandchildren, the already retired Mr. and Mrs. Walsh had to go back to work, taking jobs as cleaners and security guards just to make ends meet. "Why did my life turn out like this?" she cried. "What about your last life?" I asked. "Were you happy then?" She drifted into memory. "My last life," she recounted her story. In that timeline, after Ethan's first wife left him with 3 kids, she had married him. She treated his children as her own, but when she was finally pregnant with her own child, one of the stepchildren pushed her down a long flight of stairs. In the end, her fate mirrored mine. Ethan didn't call a doctor, he just watched her bleed out. The last thing he ever said to her was, "Great, now that you're dead, all your money is mine." Recalling this, Victoria was consumed with remorse. Why? Why was I reborn into this life only after I already had his children? It's not fair, I didn't think so. I thought it was perfectly fair. In fact, I couldn't imagine anything fairer. Hearing how miserable she was, I felt a sense of relief. If it weren't for Ethan," she said, her voice choked with pain, "we would have been so happy together." I disagreed. If it wasn't Ethan Vance, it would have been some other Vance, or a Smith, or a Jones. I gave her one last look. She seemed lost in a daze, muttering to herself. If it wasn't for Ethan, my life would have been so different. The next time I heard news of her, it was that she had driven off a cliff on Ethan's motorcycle, killing them both. It was all over. The harsh winter had passed. The world was slowly warming up again, surrounded by the vibrant green of new life. The end.